Okay. The SEC is ratcheting up, and we are officially in March. It is March 2nd as I record this, as I film this, and everything means a little bit more. Not saying that to be cliche. Everything that happened in February, everything that happened in the months before that, I don't want to say they mean nothing, but once you hit tournament time, they mean nothing, right? Um, Welcome to Random SEC. Please like, comment, and subscribe. And if you're new here, just welcome to the fun. I'm doing great on all social medias, so make sure you're tuned in there. Still trying to grow this YouTube channel, so a subscribe would really be helpful. Now, let's get to it. All right. So I just wanted to come on here and, kind of talk about um, who are the best teams in the SEC as far as who can make the best run in March Madness. But also who is the team that, is an underdog, maybe a dark horse, maybe a sleeper. I don't know. And then also just talk about some other topics that relate to SEC basketball. But let's start with who and what and why each team in the SEC can or cannot go far in March. And let's start with the obvious team, the team, in my opinion, the only team, in my opinion, that can perhaps make a tournament. A national championship run, and it's the Florida Gators, right? I mean, we saw it Saturday against Arkansas. That was a dominant performance. That was honestly the most impressive performance I've seen all year. And I'm not just saying that. So Florida is a very, very good team. Everybody knows that. But the question is, can you get hot? Can your guards get hot? All this and that. If you play like you did against Arkansas on Saturday, I think you're going to be fine. I think you can beat any team in the country. There's obviously a lot of good teams at the top of college basketball. Arizona, Duke, Michigan, but I think they could be all likes of them. And March Madness, you're going to have some luck, right? And you're going to have some guys step up in the clutch. You had that Walter Clayton last year. I don't know if you have that this year necessarily. But Florida, the SEC champions, right? They're your favorite. And I think if you don't admit that, then I don't know. But Florida is by far the best team in the SEC, far and away the best team in the SEC, and can very easily make the best run in March. The question is, where will they be seated? I don't know. I want to say that they are the caliber of a 1 seed. I think they are the best team in the country, if not second, third, or fourth. So I think they should be a 1 seed, but quads, metrics, all that, they may end up dropping to a 2 seed, maybe even a 3 seed. They should be a 1 seed in my opinion, though. If they go on to sweep and win the SEC tournament, I think they're a lock at a 1 seed. That's hard to do, and I don't think that's necessary to do. And even if you are a 2 seed Florida, I don't think it matters too much because that means you're getting the weakest 1 seed in theory, and a 2 seed's path is not much it's not much harder than a 1 seed's path. That being said, I don't want to go out here and say that Florida's my national championship pick because when the brackets come out, they very well may not be mine. Florida's a team that they can be elite, but when paired against certain types of teams, they could definitely be exploited. Now, I've said it once and I'll say it again. Arkansas and Florida, that was the worst matchup for Arkansas as far as, just in terms of teams, the way they play. I think Arkansas could beat pretty much any team in the country besides Florida and maybe a couple others. That's just because that's how Florida plays, and it doesn't match well at all for Arkansas. So when I say that Florida can do that to other teams in the tournament, I do mean that. But there are teams that are going to be able to exploit Florida, and whether they'll win or not, I don't know. But there are going to be other teams that can exploit Florida. Okay, I mean they lost to Auburn, guys, so they're not indestructible. They're not. I'm not going to go out here and advocate them national championships without a doubt. No, I don't think that at all. But they are a really good team, and when you have three NBA guys, Ruben Chinalu, Thomas Howard, and Alex Condon as your front court, then you're going to have a chance in every single game that you play. Florida, I don't know if I can really elaborate more on them. Right, they won the national championship last year. I do feel like that gives you a little bit of pressure, but pressure's not a thing I'm worried about for right now for them. They are playing confident, they're playing poised, and they just seem to be getting better. Are they at their peak yet? Is the real question. I don't know. I want to say yes. I want to say that this is as good as they can be, but I've said it other times in this year, and then they have exceeded my expectations. Um, but first and foremost, as I'm going to say for every SEC team, you got to take care of the games that are in front of you. And for uh, Florida, that is a couple games here. I think every team in the SEC has 2 games left. So I'm just going to check this out real quick. They got Mississippi State next, so that should be a win, right? I fully expect Florida to go undefeated throughout the season. I know they got Mississippi State and Kentucky at Kentucky. That one's going to be a little tougher, but yeah, I mean, I fully expect them to go undefeated. And as far as March goes, I feel like I can say a little bit more about Florida when the actual brackets come out, because they're a team that matchups really matter for them. Like, if you play a team that is guard heavy like Arkansas, relies on their guards, I think Florida can really exploit that. But if you play a team that is more, balanced, like Auburn, even though Auburn's playing terrible right now, or Missouri, then you could be in a little bit more trouble if you're Florida, right? You get what I'm saying. You get what I'm saying. Other SEC teams besides Florida. I'm going to go to Arkansas next. Despite the loss, despite the absolutely embarrassing loss, just absolutely dismantling of Arkansas, I still think that they are very much poised for a deep run in March. I've tweeted it out. I've said that, Arkansas last year, similar to this time, they got routed by South Carolina, and South Carolina is a much worse team than Florida. And I'm pretty sure it was around the same time as this game, if not like the exact same game time in the schedule in the season. But I remember many Arkansas fans saying the exact same things. Like, it's just not happening this year. This team's just not good enough. Saying the same things about the bigs. Jonas Tadu is not good enough. In Trevor Brazil, same thing. This year it's Malik Ewan and Nick Pringle especially. But I just remember similar things being said. So it's one game at a time, and I do think this Arkansas team, despite that loss, is progressing. I think Hal said it in the press conference that all he said to his team was, we had a great February, ran into a buzzsaw. Let's get home. Let's get better. Right? That's the mentality you got to have if you're Arkansas. My biggest question for them is mentality, because I know that they can compete with just about anybody besides Florida, because, like I said earlier, mismatch as far as matchups goes, as far as playing presence. But also, I could think they could definitely put up a better performance against Florida neutral court if they just don't get in their own heads. I think that's a really big problem for Arkansas. And you may say that's cliche, that doesn't actually happen, but it does. These are college kids, most of them, and that is a very true concern, especially for Arkansas. That's been Trevin Brazil's concern his whole career. DJ Wagner too. The only guy that really hasn't been rattled for Arkansas has been Billy Richmond. Even in that Florida game, he was playing lights out. He was playing extremely well. He's getting better every game. You're not worried about him as far as confidence goes, but you are worried about pretty much every other player. And I would have said no to Darius Acuff, but even in that Florida game, he looked rattled in the first half. I mean, he got to go into the second half too little, too late. But the question for Arkansas is mentality. And can you? I think these last 2 games of the season are vital. Can you bounce back? Can you prove to yourself that you still are a good team? It's not going to be easy. You got 2 decently tough opponents. You got Texas and Missouri, 2 tournament teams. So it's not like it's going to be a cakewalk to just boost your confidence. Now, you're going to have to do soul searching in this little time you have left before the NCAA tournament. But I do want to say, and I do want to stress that the SEC tournament, you can't really take anything from that as far as going into March. I get Florida won it last year and they won the national championship. That's an exception. As far as, like, you can't judge a team and the run they're going to have in March Madness by their performance in the SEC tournament. Arkansas did all right in the SEC tournament last year, but you would have not pinned them for a Sweet 16 run last year and, almost an Elite Eight run, Final Four run, based on their SEC tournament performance. So I just do want to say that I do think Arkansas has they poise, and I want to put them as ceiling as a Final Four, because there are teams that they're going to run into that they just can't beat. So, you'll address that in the offseason for Cal, but I do think this Arkansas team is still poised for a deep run. Like I keep pointing back to that, this team beat Texas Tech on a neutral floor with JT Toppin and all of Texas Tech fully healthy. the very next game, Texas Tech will go on to beat Duke. So it's like people will say, well, both teams have grown since then. Yeah, I agree, but that's a good Texas Tech team either way, whenever they're playing, and they had J.C. Thompson then. So Arkansas really, really does have the ceiling, and that gives you a little more hope than some of these other SEC teams that I'm going to go over, and a lot of other teams in the country, that just don't have that key signature win to just prove to the fan base and to themselves that we can beat elite teams. Arkansas has that against Texas Tech and Houston and Duke. They've really competed in those games. Michigan State as well. They definitely have it. But the question is matchups. The question is seeding. The question is mentality for Arkansas. That's my main concern. Alabama is another team, right? The way NATO's teams play, I don't want to pin them to a certain ceiling because it's all about the threes. Especially this team, it's all about the offense. It's all about the threes. It runs through that. Can you get hot in March? He's done it the last whatever years he's been at Alabama. He really hasn't uh let down in March, which is very, very surprising because usually a coach does it at least once or twice. It's very hard to just be as consistent as NATO has in March Madness. But your team's got to get hot, and that's kind of the same old story for Alabama. So when I pin a ceiling for them specifically, it's really hard to do because it could be a Final Four, it could be a round of 32. I just genuinely don't know. It's all about who they match up with and how they're hitting threes. Once again, like Arkansas, if you're match up against a team like Florida, it's not going to bode well for you because you're just not balanced enough. You don't have the big men and guards, equally to balance and to beat teams like Florida. But you do have a really, really, really good offense, and that can really shock people in the tournament. I'm going to say it later with A&M. Just some certain styles of play in the tournament really, really bode well because teams are used to playing that. They're just a little bit unorthodox. They don't always lead to national championship runs, but if you're a really elite at something like Alabama is, like Texas A&M is, like Arkansas is, that can really bode well in the tournament. Um, Missouri, they're number 4 in the SEC. They're a team that was just kind of overlooked, and they were kind of one of those teams that um, you would have put in the boat that just maybe not even make the tournament. They're a bubble team. They kind of still are, but I think they're very clearly in 10-6 in conference play. And look, it's kind of a wild card for Mizzou. I don't know what else to put them at because it genuinely I could see a lot of scenarios for Missouri as well, but they're playing better and they're getting better, and that's really all you can ask for at this point in the year. Dennis Gates done a pretty good coaching job this year. Um, they definitely have some ballers. T.O. Barrett, Mark Mitchell. I mean, the list goes on. My question for Mizzou is, can your offense play consistent enough? And can your defense answer the call too? And that's really, really broad. That's really, really general. That's really, really like I don't know, but it's really just the truth from Missouri. I don't know where to put them as far as how good they can be at the end of the day, but they're a good team, and I do think that they have the ability to make a run in March. But last year, we said that and they got first round bounced by Drake. But that was a game that really everybody kind of had as an upset. It's just kind of one of those ones that was easy to pick. And for Missouri and Arkansas, I'm really interested to see where they're going to be seated. Arkansas, they were in that 5 seed range, and I feel like now they're kind of dropped down to the 6 seed range, which I would rather have personally. I'd rather be a 6 seed than a 5 seed because the 5-12 is historically the most upset I think seed besides like 8-9 or something, just because I don't know, there's something about that, something about the way that they seed 12 seeds and the way they seed the 5 seeds. It's usually they're usually pretty common opponents. Okay, as far as just I don't know, but that is a lot of upsets. So I'd rather be the 6 seed than the 5 seed, even if the 11 seed is technically higher than the 12 seed. I'm gonna run through these last. Kentucky. This is the biggest wild card, right? I mean, who the heck is Kentucky? We don't know how good they are. We don't know how bad they are. They just they win, they lose. They're up, they're down. Who will even be playing in March Madness? I've heard rumors of Jaden Quinton's coming back. I don't know what that even means. Like, he's been out the majority of the year, played very few minutes. I don't know what to think of Kentucky. If you can get hot, if you can be in that little stretch you had late January, early February, then yeah, I think this team can really do good in the tournament. Maybe Elite Eight. I don't know, but just the recent performances we've seen from them have not been great. But Then they go and beat Vanderbilt. Like I don't know where to put these guys, right? Um, they're just so inconsistent. And maybe, when you're in March, I feel like teams either get pressured and just kind of get tight and don't play well, or they live up to the moment and force themselves to play well. And I feel like Kentucky could be one of those teams just because they have been inconsistent, yes, but they also, um, believe it or not, are a team that has a high ceiling. They've beaten good teams. They've beaten good teams. Not too much to say about Kentucky. They're just such a wild card. I don't know if how of a lead a run they could be, but sometimes when you're in March, you just kind of feel like you have to play well, so these dud games don't happen. That's what you're hoping for if you're a Kentucky fan. Tennessee, another team that's very inconsistent. Like feels like a lot of those teams in the SEC, right? Just very inconsistent teams, but you could definitely see a path where maybe they muster up a run, right? Tennessee, 0 Final Four still. That stat will be brought up, brought up until the end of time, until you change it. I don't think this is the year for that either. But there is a path, and barring Native Man's injury, I don't know what to think of him, what to think of how he's doing, what to think when he'll be back, and all that. But I do know that with Native Mint, with Jacoby Gillespie, with other guys on this team that have been playing better, there's a pathway for Tennessee to go far. Um, I just really like to see how they finish these last two games out, and maybe how they do in the SEC tournament. I don't know if I trust Rick Barnes completely with this team. Just the amount of inconsistencies. Texas. Now I tweeted this out. I said Texas is one of those teams nobody talks about, but could very easily be an Elite Eight. Now I kind of ate my words there, because in that game they ended up losing, and I think it was pretty bad. It was against Florida, and I don't know if I stand by that statement completely still, but I do think Texas is a sneaky team. Like when you have a guy like Daniel Twain, like Matas Voikitadis, like and Tremont Mark, and I just feel like Texas is a really experienced team, and they got some guys that will fight, and that's pestering in the tournament, right? So I don't know if I stand by the statement I had that the team that will maybe end up in the lead. I don't know if I stand with that, but I do think they are a good team. I do think that they have a avenue to potentially find their way on a run. The win at Texas A&M was pretty impressive, guys. I mean, they have impressive wins. They're a team that is very much under the radar, and I feel like we don't talk about them enough. And I feel like Sean Miller could very easily stir up some, madness, stir up some upsets in March Madness, and I really hope he does. I'm not really sure where Texas is kind of in this range and seeding, but it's got to be, kind of in the middle, right? 8, 9, 10. I don't know. Vanderbilt, man, oh man, started the season undefeated. They've had really, really good wins, really, really bad losses. One of those teams, once again, that just is super inconsistent, that is super streaky, that is super, can beat a team by 20, lose a team by 20. That's exactly what happened with Kentucky. I don't know what to think about them. They have Duke Miles back. I mean, they're just so inconsistent. Like I want to say I trust Mark Bryanson, but we really haven't seen him do anything in March yet. So I don't know if I do. How do you answer the call? How do you answer the bell? This Vanderbilt team is much better than last year's. This Vanderbilt team, when playing their best, is one of the best teams in the SEC. I don't think anybody doubts that. But this Vanderbilt team is very inconsistent. So where do they stand? Texas A&M. This is a team I'm going to go a little bit in depth here. I said it earlier how certain play styles, certain ways of playing can affect people in the tournament. Texas A&M is very, very much in that boat. Like the 90s style play, the Nolan Richardson style play, the 40 minutes fell, the unlimited pressing, the high scoring offense, the fast paced. That is not common in today's game. I'm going to make that very clear. That is not common in today's game. The SEC now, Buckyball, they started out undefeated at 7-0 or whatever it was. They've gone downhill a little bit. I think the SEC's figured it out a little bit. In March, teams are going to be oblivious to this. Now, obviously, they'll have film and all that, but they're going to be, when the game starts, there's really nothing to prepare for that unless you know it. They'll know it by film, but when it comes time to play, in that first 5-10 minutes, and they're gassed, A&M can step on the throttle, and they can definitely make a run in March. And I don't care how bad they've been in February, they can make a run in March, just simply because of the fact that their play style is so unique that teams aren't used to it, And when it comes into the tournament, and we've seen it a lot. I mean, we see it time and time again with teams that are like this because there's very few of them. They can gas teams out. They can tire you out and they can make you break. I don't want to say that's going to happen, but there is a very good avenue for Texas A&M, and I'm going to have a lot of brackets, and some of mine, they're definitely going to go far. Georgia, kind of the final team that will make the tournament. Auburn's, we don't know yet. I don't think they should, but Georgia, once again, kind of everybody downward from Arkansas is just super inconsistent in the SEC, and even Arkansas and Alabama have inconsistencies. Florida's really the only team that's super consistent. But Georgia, man, another just high-flying offense, and last year's tournament performance was very, very, very disappointing. Very just absolutely dominant performance from Gonzaga. Just destroyed Vanderbilt. I mean, Georgia is a team that I just don't know. They're one of those teams like you can't pick out a team and compare them to a former team in March Madness and say this is where the run happens. I could see a path for a run very well. I feel like with Jeremiah Wilkinson on the floor, they're a much better team. But at the end of the day, I don't know. All right. So I kind of spent a long time on that. But let's get into SEC Player of the Year candidates. And now I think it's kind of a clear two-man race at this point. Is Thomas Haug and Darius Acuff. And I'm sure the SEC media and whoever votes on this award already has their pick because there's really not too much else to prove in the season. But in my opinion, anybody but Darius Acuff is the wrong answer. Thomas Haug's a terrific player, and Florida showed up Arkansas. But as far as individual awards, I don't think that really matters. The things that Darius Acuff have done are unheard of, especially as a freshman. I mean, he should win SEC Freshman of the Year and SEC Player of the Year. That's why these last few segments, I didn't really have too much to say of them because, I mean, they're kind of clear cut. I could very well see them picking Thomas Haug, but I very, very much lean Darius Acuff. Just the accolades and the just stats that he's broken. It's absurd. It's absurd. And that Alabama performance really, I think solidified him and hopefully gets healthy because Arkansas is very much going to need him down the stretch here. All right. How many teams can actually make the tournament from the SEC? Right now, I think we're looking at 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 teams. We had 14 last year. 10's really good still. But Auburn is a team that's very much on the bubble right now. The way they're playing, they definitely don't deserve to be in, but there's still 2 games left plus the SEC tournament, so there's an avenue for sure for them to sneak their way in there. Bruce Pearl surely wants them in there. Stephen Pearl surely wants his team in there, so there's definitely an avenue for them. But I'd lean no, just from what I've seen these past few weeks. So 10 teams likely from the SEC, which is still absurd. We said it was going to be a great fall off this year, and it has been. It's not as good of a conference last year. Last year was the best college basketball conference ever, but man, it's still been really good. And 10 teams in the tournament is about as good as you can do. Like 14 was unheard of, dude. 14 was literally insane, and I think the record before that was 11, the Big East. So 10, that's pretty good. Like I'm not gonna sit here and say that that's not. And look, just extra topics. Don't have too many people watching live. It's been a while since I've been on YouTube, so that's totally understandable. But coaching talk, maybe. I've seen rumors of Todd Golden maybe going to the NBA. I think that's very, very, very wrong. I don't see why he would. And I know it's a common theme, especially prior years to happen. But considering Billy Donovan did it for Florida, I don't think Todd's going to make that same mistake. Surely Donovan's in his ear telling him, this isn't the way to do it because, I mean, Billy Donovan didn't work out well. I mean, it was all right, but at the end of the day, it didn't work out so well. But he is really young. But people who are, just worried about that, I don't think that's the time. If that does ever happen, I think that's going to be years and years in advance. And obviously, I don't think Florida's a stepping stone for him. I think he's submitted there. So as far as coaching concerns, I don't think you got a concern about Todd Golden. But that's really all I have to say. Thank you for watching. This is Random SEC. Adios.